I was sitting in the doctor's waiting room when my phone rang. It was Angela, my only daughter. Her voice sounded strange, almost cold when she said, "Mom, we're flying to Europe tomorrow. I sold your beach house and your car. We needed the money. Bye." And she hung up. Just like that. 45 years raising her, sacrificing for her, and she discards me like I'm trash. But I took a deep breath and smiled, because there was something my dear daughter didn't know. My name is Anne. I'm 71 years old, and until that moment, I thought I knew my daughter. I had just been widowed 6 months ago. Robert, my husband, died of a heart attack while we were having breakfast together, just like every morning for 45 years. That morning, he had served me coffee and toast as always. He had kissed my forehead and said, "Good morning, my love." Those were his last words. Since then, Angela had been more present in my life, or so I thought. She would visit 3 times a week, help me with the funeral arrangements, and join me at the market. She even suggested I go to the doctor for a general checkup. "Mom, you need to take better care of yourself now that you're alone," she'd say, with that smile I thought was born of love, but which I now understand was one of convenience. The beach house had been our refuge for years. Robert and I bought it when Angela was 15 with a lot of effort and sacrifice. Every summer we went there, built memories, celebrated birthdays, Christmases. Angela brought her boyfriends, then Edward, her husband. I cooked for everyone, cleaned, did the laundry. It was our family tradition. I never thought she would see it as just money, and the car, that old Volkswagen that Robert cared for, as if it were his own child. He washed it every Sunday, changed the oil religiously, and always parked it on the same corner under the shade of the tree. Angela knew what that car meant to me. It was the last piece of him I had left. His scent was still embedded in the seats. When she hung up, I just sat there on that uncomfortable green plastic chair, surrounded by other sick people, and for the first time in months, I didn't cry. Something strange happened inside me, a calm I hadn't felt since Robert's death, because in that moment, I remembered something I had completely forgotten. 3 days before he died, Robert had handed me a manila envelope. "Anne, keep this in your dresser drawer. If anything happens to me, open it after some time has passed, but only when you feel ready." I put it away without much thought. After the funeral, with so much pain and so many arrangements, I simply forgot about it. But there it was, waiting for me at home. The nurse called me into the doctor's office. The doctor examined me, told me I was in good health for my age, that I just needed to rest more and eat better. I nodded and smiled, but my mind was elsewhere. I was thinking about that envelope, about the coldness in Angela's voice, about how Edward was probably behind all of this. He had never liked me, always saw me as a burden. I left the office and walked slowly to the bus stop. I didn't have a car anymore, according to Angela, but as I waited, I couldn't help but smile. There was something poetic about all this. My daughter thought she had left me with nothing, but what she didn't know was that Robert, my dear Robert, was always a man who planned ahead. The bus arrived, and I sat by the window. I watched the city go by, the houses, the stores, the people rushing from one place to another, all with their own tragedies, their own secrets. I had mine too, and I was about to uncover them. When I got home, I went straight up to my room. I opened the dresser drawer, and there it was, the manila envelope exactly where I had left it. My hands trembled a little as I picked it up. I could feel there were several documents inside. Robert had written my name in his careful handwriting on the front. I sat on the bed we had shared for so many years and took a deep breath. It was starting to get dark outside, and the house filled with those familiar shadows that no longer scared me. I opened the envelope slowly, as if unwrapping a birthday present. What I found inside would change everything. What I found in that envelope took my breath away. There were legal documents, deeds, bank certificates, and a handwritten letter from Robert. My eyes filled with tears as I read his familiar script. "My dearest Anne, if you are reading this, it means I am no longer with you. Forgive me for not telling you everything while I was alive, but I wanted to protect you from worry. Over the years, I invested our savings in properties and businesses. We don't just own the beach house, we have 6 other properties, including the apartment building where Angela and Edward live. We also own stock in 3 companies that are worth more than you can imagine. You are rich, my love. You were always rich, but now you're rich on paper, too. My hand shook as I reviewed the documents. There were deeds to houses in different parts of the city, a condo downtown, a small hotel on the coast, and sure enough, the 20-story building where my daughter lived. Robert had been the silent owner for the last 10 years, but he had put everything in the name of a company I knew nothing about. And according to the papers, I was the sole heir to that company. There were also bank statements from accounts I never knew existed, numbers that seemed unreal. Robert had been a bus driver for 40 years, but apparently he had also been a very smart investor. Every dollar we saved, every sacrifice we made, he had multiplied it in silence, and I never knew a thing. In the letter, Robert explained that he had kept it all a secret because he didn't want me to worry about money, nor did he want Angela to know about our real financial situation. You know our daughter, Anne. If she knew we had this much money, her attitude would change. I want her to love us for who we are, not for what we have. What an irony. Our daughter had left us thinking we had nothing, when in reality we had everything. I couldn't sleep that night. I walked through the house touching the old furniture, the decorations Angela had always criticized for being outdated. I looked at the family photos on the wall, especially the one where she was 5 years old, sitting on Robert's lap laughing. Where did that sweet little girl go? When had she become so cold, so calculating? The next morning, very early, the phone rang. It was Angela again. Her voice sounded different, softer, but I had already learned to distrust those changes in tone. Mom, how are you? I wanted to let you know we've transferred the money from the house and the car. We deposited your share into your account. It's not much, but it will help you live for a few months while you look for something smaller. My share, I asked, keeping my voice calm. Yes, Mom. Obviously, we weren't going to leave you with nothing. We gave you 30%. It's fair, right? We need the money for the investment in Europe. Edward has an incredible business opportunity there. 30%? Of my own things. How generous. I understand. Daughter, when are you leaving? This afternoon. Our bags are already packed. We'll be gone for at least 6 months, maybe longer if the business works out. But don't worry, Mom. When we get back, we'll help you find a small apartment, something that fits your needs. Fits my needs. As if she knew what my needs were. All right, Angela. Have a good trip. Oh, Mom, I knew you'd understand. You've always been so supportive. We love you so much. And she hung up. I stood there, phone in hand, and for the first time in months, I laughed. I laughed like I hadn't since Robert died. The situation was so absurd, it was comical. My daughter had robbed me, kicked me out of my own home, spoken to me with unbearable condescension, all to finance a European adventure that would probably be a disaster. But what bothered me most wasn't the money. It was the ease with which she had discarded me. 45 years of my life dedicated to her of sacrifices of unconditional love, and she had eliminated me from her life with a 2-minute phone call. That's what really hurt. I checked my bank account online. Sure enough, they had deposited an amount that probably seemed generous to them, but to me, it was a joke. They had sold the beach house for much less than it was worth, surely, because they needed the money fast. And they had sold Robert's car for next to nothing. That afternoon from my window, I watched Angela and Edward loading suitcases into a taxi. He was carrying 2 huge bags. She carried a travel bag that looked very expensive. I saw them laughing, kissing, making plans. They looked like 2 teenagers excited for an adventure. They never looked toward my window. They never said goodbye. When the taxi left, I sat in the kitchen with a cup of tea and Robert's documents spread out on the table. I had decisions to make. I could call a lawyer, reclaim my properties, get back everything they had taken. But something told me there was a better way to handle this, a more educational way. I called George, the lawyer who had handled Robert's affairs. He had been at the funeral. He had given me his condolences. He had told me that if I needed anything, I shouldn't hesitate to call. Well, now I needed him. Mrs. Ann, what a pleasure to hear from you. How are you? I'm well, George. I need to see you urgently. I found some documents of Robert's that I don't quite understand. Of course, you can come to my office tomorrow morning. I'll be there. That night, for the first time in months, I slept soundly. I dreamed of Robert. He was sitting in his favorite chair reading the newspaper like every morning, and when he saw me, he smiled and said, "It's about time, my love. It's about time you stood up for yourself." I woke up with a strange feeling. It wasn't exactly happiness, but it wasn't the sadness I had felt for so many months either. It was something like determination. For the first time since Robert's death, I had a clear purpose. I was going to get back what was mine, but not in the way Angela expected. The next morning, I dressed more carefully than usual. I put on my wine-colored dress, the one Robert always said made me look elegant. I did my hair, put on a little makeup, and when I looked in the mirror, I saw a woman I hadn't seen in a long time. I saw a strong woman. George's office was downtown. It was an old but elegant building with marble floors and large windows. George greeted me with a warm smile, but when I showed him the documents, his expression changed completely. "Mrs. Ann, this is much more than I imagined. Robert was a very smart man. Look, according to these papers, you are the owner of—" "I know, George. I've already reviewed them. What I need to know is what I can do legally." George explained that everything was in order, that the documents were legitimate, that I was the rightful owner of all those properties. He also confirmed something I already suspected. The sale of the beach house had been illegal because Angela had no right to sell it. "We can recover the house immediately, Mrs. Ann, and we can also proceed legally against your daughter for fraud." "No, George. I don't want to proceed legally. I want to do this another way. I want everything to be kept secret for now." "Can you help me?" George looked at me with curiosity but nodded. "Of course. You're my client. What do you need?" "I need you to discreetly recover the beach house. Do whatever is necessary to nullify that fraudulent sale. And I need you to help me take real control of all my properties, especially the building where my daughter lives. I understand. It will be a process that will take a few weeks, but it's completely feasible." "Perfect. And George, I need no one to know I'm behind all this, at least for now." When I left George's office, I felt like I had woken up from a very long dream. I walked through the downtown streets, watching the people, the buildings, the life that continued its normal course. But for me, everything had changed. I had a plan. The next few weeks were the strangest of my life. Officially, I was a poor widow who had been abandoned by her daughter, but secretly I was a wealthy woman quietly orchestrating the recovery of her estate. George worked efficiently, and every few days he would call to give me updates on the progress of the legal proceedings. I decided to stay in my house for the time being. It was mine, after all, although Angela probably expected me to move into a boarding room. Every morning I woke up, had breakfast at the same table where Robert and I had shared so many years, and then went for a walk in the neighborhood. The neighbors greeted me with that mix of pity and curiosity they reserve for recent widows. Audrey, my lifelong neighbor, approached me one afternoon while I was watering the front plants. "Ann, dear, is it true that Angela went to Europe and left you all alone?" "Yes, Audrey, she left with Edward. They have business plans there. And how are you going to live, dear?" We all know Robert didn't leave much money. "If only you knew," I thought. "Don't worry, Audrey, I'm going to be fine. Do you need anything? I can bring you food, help you with shopping. You're very kind, but I'm fine." "Really?" Audrey looked at me with that expression I knew well. It was the same look I had received after the funeral, with compassion mixed with a bit of relief that it wasn't her tragedy. "Well, you know where to find me if you need anything." These conversations repeated constantly. The butcher, the baker, the lady at the corner store, they all spoke to me with that soft tone they use for the unfortunate, and I would nod, smile, and thank them for their concern. But inside, a part of me enjoyed this performance. It was like living a double life. George called me on a Wednesday morning. "Mrs. Ann, I have good news. I managed to nullify the sale of the beach house. The buyers didn't know the sale was fraudulent, so they got their money back without any problems. The house is yours again." "Excellent, George. And the building where Angela lives?" "That one is more complicated. Technically, you've always been the owner through the company, but we need to make some administrative changes for you to have direct control. It should take another 2 weeks." "Perfect. Keep me informed." After hanging up, I sat in the kitchen with my coffee and thought about Angela. She had been in Europe for 3 weeks, and I hadn't heard anything from her. Not a call, not a text, not even a postcard. To her, I had ceased to exist the moment she got the money she needed, but I knew that was about to change. I decided to visit the beach house. I took the bus to the coast, the same route Robert and I had taken hundreds of times. The house was exactly as I remembered it, small, painted a cream color with a porch overlooking the sea. The new owners had put out some potted plants, but other than that, everything was the same. I sat on the curb across the street and looked at it for an hour. I remembered the summer afternoons when Angela was little, running on the beach building sandcastles, Robert grilling fish on the barbecue while I made salads in the kitchen, Angela bringing friends, then boyfriends, then Edward, all those happy moments she had reduced to a simple business transaction. An elderly man came out of the house and saw me sitting there. He approached with curiosity. "Are you all right, ma'am?" "Yes, thank you. I'm just remembering. I knew the previous owners. Yes, I knew them very well. What a shame what happened. They told us the elderly lady was very sick and needed to sell quickly. We thought it was a bargain, but now it turns out the sale wasn't legal. We had to give the house back. Did you meet them personally?" "No, we did everything through intermediaries, but they told us the daughter was handling everything because the mother couldn't. What a sad situation. If only he knew how sad it really was," I thought. "Well, I'm glad you didn't lose your money. Yes, luckily everything was resolved well, although now we have to look for another house. We really liked this one. I left there with a heavy heart. It wasn't just the money that hurt me. It was the ease with which Angela had lied about me, invented a story about my illness, used my supposed vulnerability to justify her actions. To her, I was not a person with feelings, but an obstacle that had to be removed." That night I called George again. "George, I need your help with something else. I want to get Robert's car back too. That's going to be more difficult, Mrs. Ann. The car was in your name, but your daughter had a power of attorney that allowed her to sell it. How is that possible? Apparently you signed that power of attorney a few months ago after your husband's death. You don't remember." There it was, the moment Angela had started planning all this. I vaguely remembered signing some papers she had brought me, telling me they were to facilitate the funeral and inheritance procedures. I was so confused by grief that I signed without reading. How naive I had been. I see George. Is there any way to get it back? We can try, but it will be more complicated. We would need to prove that you signed that power under deceit or duress. Let's do it. I want to get back everything they took from me. Over the next few weeks, I developed a strange routine. In the mornings, I was the poor widow everyone knew. I would go out to buy necessities, talk to the neighbors, keep up appearances. But in the afternoons, I became a businesswoman. I studied Robert's documents, talked to George, planned my next move. I learned things about finance I never thought I'd need to know. I discovered that Robert had been much smarter than I thought. Each of his investments had been carefully calculated. The building where Angela lived, for example, was not only profitable because of the rent, but it was in an area that was rapidly appreciating in value. I also discovered that Edward, Angela's husband, had debts, a lot of debts. He had taken out loans using the apartment they lived in as collateral without knowing that he was not the real owner. When the banks found out about this, he was going to be in serious trouble. George called me on a Friday with important news. "Mrs. Ann, we've finished all the paperwork. You now have full control of all your properties." I also got Robert's car back. The buyer turned out to be an acquaintance of mine, and when I explained the situation, he agreed to return it in exchange for a small compensation. Excellent work. George, now I need you to help me with one more thing. I want you to send a letter to my daughter. What kind of letter? An eviction notice. There was a silence on the other end of the line. Mrs. Ann, are you sure you want to do this? Completely sure. She decided I wasn't important in her life. Now she's going to find out just how important I really am. I understand. Do you want me to send it to Europe? No. I want you to deliver it when she gets back. I have a feeling that will be very soon. I wasn't wrong. That same afternoon, Audrey came running to my house with fresh neighborhood gossip. Anne, did you know Edward is in trouble with the bank? My brother-in-law who works there told me they are investigating some loans he took out using the apartment where they live as collateral. But it turns out the apartment isn't his. Really? Yes. And it seems Angela didn't know anything. They're saying she's going to have to come back from Europe to sort out this mess. What a complicated situation. Yes, and the worst part is that apparently Edward lied to her about the business in Europe. There was no business. He just wanted to escape the debts he had here. Perfect. Everything was going exactly as I had hoped. Angela had trusted Edward had sacrificed her relationship with me for him, and now she was discovering that he was not the man she thought he was. That night, I sat on the porch with a cup of tea and looked at the stars. Robert used to say that the stars were the souls of people who had lived a full life, watching over their families from the sky. If that was true, then he was up there watching his plan unfold perfectly. "Thank you, my love," I said to the sky. "Thank you for taking care of me, even after your death." The next day, George called me early. "Mrs. Ann, there's news. Your daughter just arrived in the country. She's at the airport. Alone." "Yes, apparently Edward stayed in Europe. There are rumors they had a huge fight." "I see. Have you sent the letter yet? I'm sending it today. She should receive it tomorrow." I hung up the phone and stood there in the kitchen, feeling a mix of nervousness and anticipation. After so many weeks of silent planning, the moment for the first real move had finally arrived. Angela was about to discover that her mother was not the helpless victim she believed her to be. Angela arrived at her apartment on Tuesday night. I knew because Audrey, who seemed to have informants all over the neighborhood, came to tell me the next day. "Anne, your daughter came back last night. I saw her go up with a suitcase, but she looked terrible, pale, dark circles under her eyes, like she'd been crying the whole flight. Alone, completely alone. And something strange, Anne. When the doorman asked for her keys, she didn't have them. She had to ask the concierge to let her in with the emergency copy." Interesting. Edward had the keys, which meant he probably decided not to come back. Or maybe Angela had discovered something about him and fled. In any case, my daughter was back, and very soon she would receive my little welcome gift. George called me that same afternoon, Mrs. "And the letter was delivered an hour ago. The doorman confirmed that your daughter received it personally. Perfect. How much time did we give her?" 30 days to vacate the apartment, as required by law. "But Mrs. Ann, are you sure you want to do this? She's your daughter after all." "George, my daughter kicked me out of my own home with a 2-minute phone call. She sold my things without asking. She treated me like trash. Now she's going to learn that actions have consequences." "I understand. I just wanted to make sure you had considered all the implications." "I have considered them, George. All of them. I couldn't sleep that night. I lay awake imagining Angela's face when she read the letter. The initial confusion, then the disbelief, then the panic. She would probably think it was a mistake that someone was trying to scam her. But when she called to verify, she would discover that it was all completely legal. The next day, as if she had been waiting for my call, the phone rang at 8 in the morning. It was Angela, and her voice sounded desperate. Mom, I need to talk to you urgently. Good morning, dear. How was Europe?" "Mom, I don't have time for that right now. I received a very strange letter yesterday. It says I have to vacate my apartment in 30 days. It must be a mistake, right? Do you know anything about this?" "An eviction notice? How strange. Who is it from?" "From a company I've never heard of. It's called— Wait, let me find the letter. Robert Investments, LLC. Do you know this company?" Robert had used his own name for the company. How poetic. "No. Dear, I've never heard that name. Are you sure the letter is legitimate? That's what I want to find out. Mom, I need your help. I don't know what to do. Edward left me in Europe. He ran off with another woman, and now I come back to this. I don't understand what's happening." There was the confirmation. Edward had abandoned her, probably when the money ran out, or when he realized the legal problems back home were more serious than he thought. Poor Angela. She had sacrificed her family for a man who was worthless. "I'm so sorry, dear." "Where are you now?" "I'm in the apartment, but I don't know for how long." "Mom, can I come see you? I need to talk to someone. I don't have anyone else." The irony was perfect. Now that she was without the man she had abandoned me for, she remembered she had a mother. "Of course, dear. Come whenever you want. I'm on my way now." I hung up and looked at myself in the mirror. I had to be perfect for this performance. I put on my most conservative gray dress, tied my hair in a simple bun, and practiced my expression of a worried but resigned mother. When Angela arrived, she would see exactly what she expected to see: a poor, vulnerable widow who had been abandoned by her own daughter. Angela arrived an hour later. When I opened the door, I was shocked at how bad she looked. She had lost weight, had deep dark circles under her eyes, and her expensive clothes looked wrinkled and neglected. Her eyes were red from crying. "Mom," she said, and for a moment I thought she was going to hug me, but she stopped as if suddenly remembering how things had ended between us. "Come in." "Dear, do you want some coffee?" "Yes, please." We sat in the kitchen at the same table where I had read Robert's documents weeks ago. Angela looked small in that chair, lost like when she was a child, and came to tell me about her problems at school. "Mom, I'm so sorry for how I left. I know I didn't treat you well. It's in the past, dear." "No, it's not. I treated you badly. I said horrible things to you. And now," her voice broke, "now I have no one. What happened with Edward? He left with a waitress from a hotel in Paris, a 25-year-old girl. It turns out there was never any business in Europe. It was all a lie. He just wanted to escape the debts he had here, and he used the money from the sale of your house to fund his adventure. All the debts. Yes, Mom. A lot of debts. It seems he had been taking out loans for 7 years using the apartment where we lived as collateral. But now I find out he wasn't the owner of the apartment. How is that possible? Here was my chance. I don't know, dear. Property matters are very complicated. The problem is that now the banks are coming after me for his debts. They say that since we were married, I'm also responsible. And on top of that, this eviction notice. Mom, I don't know what to do. I have no money, no job, no place to live." She started to cry. Real tears of genuine desperation. And for a moment, my mother's heart softened. I wanted to hug her, comfort her, tell her everything was going to be okay. But then I remembered the coldness in her voice when she called me from the doctor's office, the ease with which she had discarded me, the way she had spoken to me, as if I were a burden. "Have you spoken to a lawyer about the letter, 'I don't have money for a lawyer, Mom'? We spent all the money in Europe. Edward took what little was left when he left with that woman, so what are you going to do?" "I don't know. I thought maybe I could stay with you for a while, just until I find a job and can get a small place to live." There it was, the question I had been waiting for. After kicking me out of my own home, after selling my things, after treating me like trash, now she wanted me to rescue her. She wanted the poor widow she had created to save her from the consequences of her own actions. "Of course, dear. This will always be your home." Angela looked at me with surprise, as if she hadn't expected it to be that easy. "Really, Mom? After everything that happened, you're my daughter, Angela. That will never change." She stood up, and this time she did hug me. It was a desperate hug from someone who is drowning and clinging to the only thing they can find. I hugged her back, but not with the unconditional love of before. Now there was calculation in my embrace. Strategy. "Thank you, Mom. I promise I'll find a job soon. I won't be a burden. Don't worry about that now. Rest, recover, and then we'll see what your options are." Angela left that afternoon to get some things from her apartment. I stayed in the kitchen thinking about how easy it had been. She had come to me exactly as I had planned, broken, desperate, with no options. And best of all, she suspected nothing. To her, I was still the poor, abandoned mother who needed her compassion. But this was only the first part of my plan. Having her live with me would give me the perfect opportunity for the next phase. I was going to let her settle in, feel safe, believe she had found refuge in my home. And then when she least expected it, I was going to teach her the difference between being poor by choice and being poor by consequence. That night, I called George. "George, I need you to do something else for me. Tell me, Mrs. Ann. I want you to investigate Edward's debts. I want to know exactly how much he owes to whom and what legal options I have to separate them from my daughter. That will take time, but it's feasible." "Perfect. And George, I want you to keep this in absolute secrecy. No one can know I'm behind this investigation." "Of course, Mrs. Ann. May I ask what your final plan is?" "My plan. George is very simple. I'm going to save my daughter. But first she has to understand what it truly means to hit rock bottom." When I hung up, I poured myself a glass of the wine Robert kept for special occasions. It had been a long time since I'd had an occasion as special as this. The game had begun, and for the first time in months, I held all the good cards. Angela moved into my house the next day. She arrived with 2 suitcases and a cardboard box, all that was left of her previous life. I watched her unpack in her old room, the same one she had slept in during her teenage years, and I could see the humiliation in her every move. She had gone from living in a luxury apartment to taking refuge in her childhood bedroom. "Mom, I found this in the apartment," she said, showing me a manila envelope. "It was among Edward's things. It has your name on it. It was another envelope from Robert." My heart sped up, but I kept my composure. "My name? How strange. Yes, look." She showed me the envelope. Indeed, it had my name written in Robert's handwriting, but this envelope was different from the one I had found in my dresser. This one was smaller, newer. "Maybe Edward found it among Dad's things when he died and forgot to give it to me," Angela said. "It's possible." "May I see it?" I opened the envelope in her presence. Inside was a short letter and a small key. The letter said, "Anne, if you are reading this after I've given you the main envelope, it means our daughter is going through a difficult time. This key opens a safe deposit box at Central Bank Downtown Branch. The number is 247. There is something in there that can help you help her, but use it wisely. With eternal love, Robert." Angela read the letter over my shoulder. A safe deposit box. Dad had a safe deposit box. I had no idea, I lied. "Your father never told me about this. Do you think we should go see what's in it?" "I don't know, dear. Maybe it's better to leave things as they are. But Mom, maybe there's something important in their documents, or I don't know, maybe something of value that could help us." The desperation in her voice was palpable. Angela was clinging to any possibility of finding a way out of her situation, and I was going to let her cling a little longer before showing her the full reality. "All right," I said after a calculated pause. "We can go tomorrow." That night, Angela and I had dinner together for the first time in months. She had cooked trying to be helpful, but the food tasted of guilt and despair. She told me more details about what had happened in Europe, and each story was worse than the last. "Edward lied to me about everything, Mom, not just the business, but also the debts. I thought he only owed a little money, but it turns out he owes over $100,000, and the worst part is he used my name for some loans without my knowledge. How is that possible? He forged my signature. When I married him, I gave him some documents to handle the bank paperwork for our joint account. I never thought he would use them for this. Do you have any way to prove you didn't know I don't know? It's all so complicated. The banks say that since we were married, I'm responsible for all his debts anyway. And the divorce, I don't even know where Edward is now. He completely disappeared. His phone is disconnected. He doesn't answer emails, nothing. It's like he vanished into thin air. Perfect. Edward had fled like the rat he always was, leaving Angela to face the consequences of his actions alone. In a way, he had done me a favor. Now my daughter was experiencing exactly what I had felt when she abandoned me, the betrayal of someone she had completely trusted. "I'm so sorry, dear. I didn't know things were that bad." "I didn't either, Mom. I thought Edward loved me, that we were going to build something together. But it turns out I was just an easy way for him to get money and documents." Angela started crying again. How could I have been so stupid? How did I not see what he really was? It was tempting to tell her that I had seen the signs from the beginning, that I had tried to warn her that Edward had never seemed trustworthy to me, but that would have broken my facade of a sympathetic and vulnerable mother. Love blinds us sometimes, dear. Don't blame yourself. But Mom, I didn't just ruin my life. I ruined yours too. I treated you horribly. I took your house, your car, your things, and all to give it to a man who abandoned me at the first opportunity. That's in the past, Angela. No, it's not. Now we're both in trouble because of me. You lost everything Dad left you, and I lost my marriage and my future. We're two poor women trying to survive. If only she knew, I thought. If only she knew that at this moment I have more money than she could ever imagine, that I own the building where she used to live, that I can solve all her problems with a single phone call. But it wasn't time yet. The next day we went to the bank. Angela was nervous, hopeful. I maintained my act of a confused widow who didn't understand much about finances. The bank employee led us to the safe deposit boxes, verified my identification, and opened box number 247. Inside were jewels. A lot of jewels. Rings, necklaces, bracelets, earrings. I recognized some pieces as heirlooms from Robert's family. Others were completely new to me. There was also a letter explaining the origin of each piece and its approximate value. Angela gasped, "Mom, this must be worth a fortune." "You think so?" "Yes, look at this emerald and this pearl necklace. Mom." Dad kept a treasure here. According to Robert's letter, the jewelry was worth approximately $200,000. It was a significant amount, but it was nothing compared to the rest of my estate. It was like finding loose change under the sofa cushions when you have $1 million in the bank. "What do we do with this, Mom? I don't know, dear." "They're just family memories. But, Mom, we could sell some pieces. With this money, you could get your beach house back and I could pay off some of Edward's debts." There it was again. Even when she found something valuable, Angela's first reaction was to think about how to use it to solve the problems Edward had created. She hadn't learned a thing yet. "Are you sure you want to use your father's inheritance to pay Edward's debts?" "What other choice do I have, Mom? If I don't pay something, the banks will seize everything I have. And technically, I don't have anything. Everything was in Edward's name. Think about it carefully, dear. Once you sell these jewels, you won't be able to get them back." "I know, but what else can I do? I can't get a job with all these pending lawsuits. No employer will want to hire someone with so many legal problems." We took the jewelry home. Angela spread it out on the kitchen table and examined it piece by piece, calculating which ones she could sell and which she could keep. It was painful to watch her reduce her father's memories to numbers on a piece of paper. "Mom, I think with this we can solve the most urgent problems. Not all of them, but at least the most serious ones." And then what? Then I look for a job. I try to rebuild my life. Maybe I can find a small room to rent something cheap. "You don't have to leave, dear. You can stay here as long as you need." "No, Mom. I've already taken advantage of your kindness too much. Besides, you need money too. You can't support me indefinitely." It was fascinating to see how Angela had built a completely false image of my financial situation. To her, I was a poor widow who could barely support herself when in reality, I had enough resources to buy the entire building where we had found the jewelry. That afternoon, George called me, "Mrs. Anne, I have the full report on Edward's debts. The situation is worse than we thought. How much worse? He owes over $200,000 to several banks, and he also has debts with private lenders. What's more worrying is that he did use falsified documents with your daughter's signature for some of these loans. That means Angela is responsible. Legally, it's complicated. If we can prove she didn't know, we could free her from some of the debts. But it will be a long and expensive process." "How expensive?" "For a good lawyer specializing in these types of cases, probably $50,000. And there's no guarantee of success." "I see. And if she just pays the debts, if she has the money, that would be the quickest solution. But I doubt she has access to that amount." "George, I want you to prepare all the necessary documents to free my daughter from these debts. But don't tell her anything yet. You're going to pay Mrs. Anne. I'm going to do whatever it takes to protect my daughter. But this has to be handled in a very specific way." When I hung up, I found Angela in the living room looking at the jewelry with a sad expression. She looked lost, like a child who had broken her favorite toy and didn't know how to fix it. "What are you thinking about, dear, about Dad? About how disappointed he would be in me if he could see what I've done with my life. Your father loved you very much, Angela. He would understand." "No, Mom. He taught me to be responsible, to value family, to not be selfish. And I did the exact opposite. I abandoned my mother for a man who turned out to be a liar. I sold my family's memories for money. I ruined everything he built." For the first time since she had returned, I heard true regret in her voice. It wasn't just sorrow for the consequences of her actions, but a genuine acknowledgement that she had done something morally wrong. People make mistakes, dear. The important thing is to learn from them. "But how do I learn from this, Mom? How do I repair the damage I've done?" There was the question I had been waiting for. Angela was finally ready to face the truth about her actions and their consequences. But it wasn't time to reveal my final card yet. First, I had to let her hit rock bottom completely. The next few days were crucial for my plan. Angela decided to sell most of the jewelry, keeping only the engagement ring Robert had given me and a small necklace that had belonged to her grandmother. I watched her prepare to go to the jeweler's research prices and negotiate with buyers. It was painful to see her reduce decades of family history to business transactions, but it was necessary for her to understand the real weight of her decisions. Mom, I got $180,000 for the jewelry, she told me one afternoon, counting the bills on the kitchen table. It's less than I expected, but it's enough to pay the most urgent debts. Are you sure you want to do this? I have no choice. If I don't pay something soon, they're going to seize everything. Even this house could be at risk if they prove I have some kind of legal connection to the properties. How ironic the situation was. Angela was worried about losing a house that I owned, paying off the debts of a man who had abandoned her with money from jewelry that had belonged to the same man who had built the fortune that could save her. And how are you going to decide which debts to pay first? I spoke with a free financial advisor at the bank. She told me to prioritize the debts that have real collateral because those are the ones that can affect properties or lead to immediate seizure. Angela had matured a lot in these few weeks. The woman who had sold my things without consulting me was now carefully researching every financial decision. Suffering had made her more responsible, but also more fragile. That night, as she organized the debt documents on the table, I received a call from George. Mrs. Ann, I have important news. We've located Edward. Where is he? In Paris, as your daughter suspected. But here's the interesting part. He's trying to get French residency through a fraudulent marriage with that young woman your daughter mentioned. A fake marriage. Yes. Apparently the girl needs papers, and he needs a way to stay in Europe without being deported. But most importantly, we found evidence that he deliberately forged your daughter's documents with the intention of fleeing the country. That means Angela can be freed from the debts. With this evidence, yes, we can prove fraud and coercion. Your daughter wouldn't have to pay for anything Edward did behind her back. It was perfect. I had a way to legally save Angela from all her debts without her suspecting I had the money to do it. George, I want you to start the legal process immediately. Should I tell your daughter? Not yet. I want the process to be completely finished before I tell her anything. I don't want to give her false hope. Understood. This will take about 3 weeks, maybe a month. Perfect. When I hung up, Angela looked at me curiously. Who was that mom? A woman asking for Mrs. Miller, the neighbor from the corner. Wrong number. Lying had become easy. Every day that passed, I felt more comfortable with this double life I was leading. On one hand, I was the poor, abandoned mother Angela thought I was. On the other, I was a wealthy woman, quietly orchestrating her daughter's salvation and education. For the next 2 weeks, I watched Angela struggle with decisions she had never had to make. How to stretch money for food, how to negotiate with creditors, how to look for a job when your credit history is ruined. It was a cruel but necessary education. Mom, I went to 3 job interviews today, she told me one afternoon, coming home with swollen feet and a tired face. In 2 of them, they told me they can't hire me because of the pending legal issues. In the 3rd, they offered me a part-time job cleaning offices at night. Are you going to take it? I have no choice. It pays very little, but it's better than nothing. And I can work at night to keep looking for something better during the day. Seeing my daughter, who had lived a comfortable life for over 40 years, preparing to clean offices at night broke my heart. But it also filled me with pride. She was finally facing reality without expecting someone else to solve her problems. Are you sure you can handle so much physical work I'll have to learn? I can't keep being a burden to you, Mom. It's enough that you let me live here without paying anything. This is your home, Angela. No, Mom, this is your house, and I'm here because of your generosity. But I'm not going to abuse it forever. One night, while Angela was at her first cleaning shift, Audrey came to visit me. She sat in the kitchen with me sipping tea and looking at the family photos that adorned the walls. Anne, I have to ask you something. Did you know Angela was going to come back in this condition? What do you mean? Well, when she left, she seemed so sure of herself, so arrogant. She talked about the great life she was going to have in Europe, how successful Edward was. And now she comes back completely destroyed, working as a cleaner, living with you again. Life has many turns, Audrey. Yes, but there's something more. I've been watching Angela these days, and she seems different. Not just sad, but humble, as if she's learned something important. Audrey had always been very perceptive. What do you think she's learned? I think she's learned the value of the things she had taken for granted, like having a mother who loves her unconditionally. Maybe. Anne, can I tell you something? When Angela left and treated you so badly, many of us thought you would never forgive her. But here you are, taking care of her again, giving her a home when she has nowhere to go. She's my daughter, Audrey. Yes, but not all mothers would do what you're doing, especially after being treated the way you were treated. If Audrey knew the whole truth that I had the power to solve all of Angela's problems, but was choosing to let her suffer a little longer so she would learn the complete lesson, what would she think? Do you think I'm doing the right thing? I think you're doing what a good mother would do. But I also think Angela needs to fully understand what she lost when she abandoned you. What do you mean I think she needs to value you, not just as the mother who rescues her when she's in trouble, but as the strong woman who built a stable life for 45 years? She needs to respect you, not just need you. Audrey had hit the nail on the head. That was exactly the point of my entire plan. I didn't want Angela to come back to me out of desperation. I wanted her to come back out of genuine respect and mature love. And how do you think that can happen? I think it's already happening. I've seen her these days. Anne, the way she talks to you now is completely different. She's no longer the daughter who gives you orders or treats you like a burden. Now she's an adult woman who is genuinely grateful to have a mother like you. That night when Angela came back from her job, I saw her arrive tired but with a new dignity. She had earned those few dollars with her own effort, and that meant something to her. How was your first day? Hard, but not as bad as I thought. The other ladies who work there helped me a lot. One of them, Carmen, taught me the tricks to clean more efficiently. Carmen. Yes, she's 60 and has been cleaning offices for 20 years. She told me she started after her husband left her with 3 small children. She says it's not the job she dreamed of, but it gave her independence and dignity. She sounds like a wise woman. She is. She told me something that made me think a lot. What did she say? She told me there are 2 types of people who end up doing this job: those who are there because they didn't have opportunities, and those who are there because they ruined the opportunities they did have. She asked me which group I was in, and what did you answer? I told her the truth, that I had all the opportunities in the world, a family that loved me, a stable home, an inheritance, and that I ruined it all by following a man who was worthless. What did she say? She laughed and said, "Well, honey, at least you know exactly why you're here." That puts you one step ahead of most people. Angela poured herself a glass of water and sat with me at the table. Mom, I want you to know something. These days have been the hardest of my life, but also the most important. Why? Because I finally understand what really matters. It's not the money. It's not living in the most luxurious apartment. It's not impressing people. It's having people who genuinely love you, who are there when everything falls apart. Angela. No, let me finish. You have every right to hate me for what I did to you. I abandoned you when you needed me most. I took everything Dad had left you. I treated you like you were a nuisance. And now I'm here again, hoping you'll forgive me and take care of me. I've already forgiven you, dear, but I haven't forgiven myself. And I won't until I prove that I've really changed, that I've learned from my mistakes. George called me the next morning. Mrs. Ann, I have excellent news. The legal process is almost complete. We can free your daughter from all of Edward's debts. It was time. After weeks of watching Angela struggle work and reflect on her mistakes, the moment had finally come to show her that she had never been alone, that she had always had someone quietly watching over her. George, I want you to arrange a meeting. It's time for my daughter to know the whole truth. George arranged the meeting for Friday morning at his office. I told Angela I had gotten an appointment with a lawyer who might be able to help with her legal problems, but I didn't explain the details. She agreed to come, although she was nervous about the cost of the consultation. Mom, I don't have money to pay a lawyer. I can barely cover basic expenses. Don't worry about that now, dear. Let's just hear what he has to say. We arrived at George's office on time. Angela had dressed in her best clothes, which now looked a bit big on her thinner frame. She was nervous, fidgeting with her hands, expecting yet another piece of bad news to add to her endless list of problems. George greeted us with his usual professional smile. Mrs. Ann, Ms. Angela. "Thank you for coming." "Thank you for seeing us," Angela replied. "Although I must warn you that my financial situation is very complicated and I probably can't afford high fees." "That's precisely what we're going to talk about," George said, exchanging a look with me. "But first, I need you to review these documents." George handed Angela a thick folder. She opened it and began to read, her expression gradually changing from confusion to surprise. "I don't understand." "These documents say that Edward forged my signature, that there's evidence of fraud, that I'm not responsible for the debts." "That's correct. We've been investigating your case for the past few weeks. We found enough evidence to prove that you were a victim of identity fraud. But how is that possible? Who paid for this investigation?" "I don't have money for this." George looked at me. It was my moment. "Angela, there's something I need to tell you." "What is it, Mom?" I took a deep breath. After weeks of acting, I was finally going to reveal the truth. "Your father left me more than you knew. A lot more." "What do you mean, George?" "Show her the other documents." George took out a second folder and handed it to Angela. This time, the documents were property deeds, bank statements, investment certificates, the entire estate Robert had built in secret. Angela read in silence for several minutes. Her face went through a full range of emotions: confusion, disbelief, shock, and finally, understanding. "Mom, this says you own the building where I used to live." "Yes." "And that you have other properties, bank accounts, investments." "Yes." "This means that when I sold the beach house, it was my house and the sale was fraudulent. I've already recovered it." Angela stared at the papers, trying to process the information. "How long have you known this?" "Since the day you called me from the doctor's office." "You knew all this when I came back from Europe asking for help." "Yes, you knew you could solve all my problems when you saw me crying every night." "Yes." There was a long, tense silence. Angela closed the folders and looked me directly in the eyes. "Why, Mom? Why did you let me suffer if you could have helped me?" This was the question I had been waiting weeks for. "Because you needed to learn something that you couldn't learn any other way." "What was that?" "You needed to learn the value of the things you had lost, the value of family, of respect, of responsibility. When you abandoned me, it wasn't just money you took from me. It was dignity. It was love. It was trust." Angela started to cry, but these were not the tears of self-pity she had shed over the past weeks. They were tears of deep understanding. "I abandoned you when you needed me most. Yes. I treated you like you were trash. Yes. And you saved me anyway. Yes, but not in the way you expected. I didn't save you by giving you money so you could keep making the same mistakes. I saved you by letting you hit rock bottom so you could learn to save yourself." George intervened discreetly. "Ms. Angela, your mother has paid all the legal expenses to free you from Edward's debts. She has also recovered all the properties that were fraudulently sold. You are completely free of legal problems." "And the cleaning job I got?" "You can quit if you want," I said, "but I hope you don't." "Why?" "Because that job is teaching you something you never learned when everything was easy. It's teaching you the value of your own effort, the dignity of honest work, the importance of valuing every dollar you earn." Angela wiped her tears and looked at me with an expression I hadn't seen in years. It wasn't the look of a daughter who needs her mother, but the look of an adult woman who respects another woman. "Do you forgive me, Mom? I forgave you a long time ago, dear." "The question is whether you can forgive yourself. I don't know if I can. I did unforgivable things." "People make mistakes, Angela. The important thing is what we do after we acknowledge those mistakes." George left us alone in his office for a few minutes. Angela and I sat in silence, processing everything that had happened. "Mom, I want you to know something. Even if you didn't have all this money, even if you really were the poor widow I thought you were, I would have learned the same lesson." "What lesson is that?" "That there's nothing more valuable than having someone who loves you unconditionally. During these weeks, the only thing that kept me sane was knowing I had a home with you, that no matter how much I had ruined my life, you were still my mother. That will never change, Angela. I know, but I also know that I can't take that love for granted ever again. I have to earn it every day with respect, with gratitude, with actions, not just words. We left George's office with a completely new relationship. We were no longer mother and daughter bound by blood and habit. We were two adult women who had chosen each other after passing the most difficult test possible. The following weeks were about rebuilding, but not the kind Angela expected. Even though she now knew I had enough resources to solve all her problems, she decided to keep her night cleaning job. "Mom, I need to finish what I started," she told me one afternoon as she got ready for work. "I can't just go back to a comfortable life as if nothing happened." "Are you sure? You don't have to punish yourself forever. It's not a punishment. It's a way to remember who I was and who I want to be now." I watched her put on her work uniform, something unthinkable a few months ago when she lived in the luxurious apartment with Edward. But there was something different in her posture, in the way she moved. She was no longer the broken woman who had arrived crying at my door. She was someone who had found dignity in honest work. Audrey came to visit that afternoon, as she had every few days since Angela had returned. "And there are some very strange rumors going around the neighborhood." "What kind of rumors? People are saying you're not as poor as we all thought." "Someone saw Angela leaving a very fancy law office downtown, and then they saw her paying off all her debts at the bank." "That costs a lot of money, Anne." "People talk a lot, Audrey." "Yes, but they're also saying you got your beach house back and somehow managed to solve all of Angela's legal problems." "That costs a lot of money, Anne." Audrey knew me too well to be fooled for long. "What exactly do you want to know?" "I want to know if my friend of 40 years has been lying to me about her situation." I poured myself a cup of tea and sat across from her. It was time to be honest with someone else. Robert left me more than anyone knew Audrey. A lot more. How much more enough for Angela and me to never have to worry about money again? Audrey was quiet for a moment, processing this information. "And why did you pretend to be poor all these months?" "Because Angela needed to learn something she couldn't learn any other way." I told her the whole story. Angela's cruel call, my plan for quiet revenge, the weeks of watching her hit rock bottom, and finally the revelation in George's office. "Anne, that's both brilliant and terrible at the same time. Terrible, yes, because you let your own daughter suffer when you could have helped her immediately, but also brilliant because I understand why you did it. You really understand, yes, Angela needed to learn the value of the things she had lost. If you had simply given her money to solve her problems, she would have learned that there's always someone to rescue her from the consequences of her bad decisions." "Exactly. But Anne didn't. It hurt you to see her suffer every day." "Every night I saw her cry, every morning I saw her get up to go to work tired and defeated. But I knew that if I rescued her too soon, she wouldn't have learned the complete lesson. And do you think she learned it? See for yourself. Angela knows she now has access to enough money to live comfortably, but she chose to keep her job. She knows she can move to a better place, but she decided to stay here with me. She knows she doesn't have to worry about debts, but she's using her own savings to help other women in similar situations. She's helping other women. Yes, she became friends with the ladies she works with and is using some of the money she earned cleaning offices to help a colleague who's having trouble paying for her son's daycare." Audrey smiled. "That's not the Angela who left for Europe. No, it's not. This Angela understands that money is a tool, not a goal. She understands that dignity comes from work and respect, not from material possessions." That night, when Angela came back from work, she found me reading in the living room. "Mom, I have to tell you something. What happened today? Carmen asked me if I was the daughter of the rich lady from the North Side. What did you tell her?" I told her, "Yes, that you have enough money for me not to have to work." And you know what she asked next? What she asked why I'm still working then. I explained that it's because I need to prove to myself that I can stand on my own 2 feet. And what did she say? She laughed and said, "Honey, that's the difference between being rich and acting rich. Your mom taught you how to be truly rich." Carmen is very wise, yes, and she made me understand something important. It's not about the money you have, but how you use it and how you relate to it. Angela sat with me on the sofa. "Mom, I want you to know that I've made a decision. What is it I'm going to keep living here with you, but not as a daughter who comes back to her parents' house? I want to stay as an adult woman who chooses to share her life with her mother. What's the difference? The difference is that I'm going to pay my share of the expenses, I'm going to contribute to the upkeep of the house, and I'm going to treat this relationship as a partnership between two independent women who love and respect each other. Angela, you don't need to. Yes, I do. Mom, I need our relationship to be different from what it was before I was a daughter who took her mother's love and care for granted. Now I want to be an adult woman who values and nurtures the most important relationship in her life. And your job, I'm going to keep working, but not necessarily cleaning offices forever. I want to study. I want to prepare myself to do something more meaningful with my life, but I want to do it step by step, earning every opportunity. Do you have any idea what you want to study? Yes, I want to study social work. These weeks taught me how many people are going through difficult situations without anyone to support them. I want to use the resources we have to help other women who are going through what I went through. It was perfect. Angela had not only learned to value what she had, but she had found a way to use her experience for something constructive. And what about Edward George told me he was arrested in France for the fraudulent marriage? He'll be deported soon. But honestly, Mom, I don't care anymore. That part of my life is over. You don't feel any resentment? No. Edward did me a favor without knowing it. If he hadn't abandoned and betrayed me, I never would have hit rock bottom. And if I had never hit rock bottom, I never would have learned to truly value what I have. That night, for the first time in months, I went to bed completely at peace. My plan had worked perfectly. Angela had not only learned the lessons she needed to learn, but she had emerged from the experience a stronger, wiser, and more compassionate person. Robert would have been proud. 6 months later, our life had found a new balance that neither of us could have imagined before. Angela finished her social work studies with excellent grades, and I decided to use some of my resources to establish a foundation to help women in situations of domestic violence and financial abandonment. Mom. The letter from the university came, Angela said one morning, walking into the kitchen with an envelope in her hands. They accepted me into the master's program. That's wonderful. When do you start next semester? But Mom, I want you to know that I'm going to pay for it with my own savings. I've been saving money from my job at the government office where I work now. Angela had gotten a job in social services after graduating, helping families in crisis. The salary wasn't high, but she had learned to live with the essentials and to value every dollar she earned. Are you sure we can easily afford the master's? I know, but I need to do it on my own. It's part of who I am now. Audrey arrived that afternoon for tea, as she had every Friday for the past few months. She had become a confidant to both of us, watching our transformation with fascination. Anne, I have to confess something, she said as she poured a second cup. At first I thought you had been very cruel to Angela. And what do you think now? Now I think you were the wisest mother I've ever known. Look at your daughter. Really look at her. It was true. The Angela who was in the living room studying for her exams was completely different from the one who had left for Europe months ago. This Angela had a serenity that came from within, a confidence based on her own achievements, not on material possessions. Did you know that yesterday I saw Angela at the market buying vegetables for a family she's helping through her work? She hadn't told me. And when I asked her why she was using her own money instead of the government budget, she told me that some things can't be measured in official budgets. That night, Angela and I had dinner on the porch, something that had become a tradition. It was our time to talk about the day plan, the future, and simply enjoy each other's company. Mom, I received a very strange letter today, she said as she cut her salad. From whom? From Edward. My muscles tensed. Edward wrote to you. From where? From prison in France. Apparently he was sentenced to 2 years for marriage fraud. In the letter he says he regrets everything he did, that he wants to ask for my forgiveness. And how do you feel about that? Honestly, I feel nothing. No anger, no sadness, no desire for revenge. It's like that part of my life happened decades ago, not months. Are you going to write back? No, not because I hate him, but because there's nothing to say. The Angela who married him doesn't exist anymore. This Angela has nothing to talk to him about. I was impressed by the maturity in her voice. The woman sitting across from me had developed an inner strength that came from hitting rock bottom and picking herself up. Do you know what this whole experience taught me, Mom? What that true love isn't the one that tells you what you want to hear. True love is the one that teaches you what you need to learn even when it hurts. That's a hard lesson to learn. Yes, but a necessary one. Edward told me what I wanted to hear. He made me feel special. He convinced me I deserved a life of luxury without effort. You taught me that true wealth comes from work respect and genuine relationships. That night, after Angela went to her room to study, I sat on the porch alone looking at the stars and thinking about Robert. I had promised him I would take care of our daughter, and I finally felt I had fulfilled that promise in the right way. I hadn't taken care of her by giving her money when she needed it. I had taken care of her by teaching her to take care of herself. I hadn't saved her by solving her problems. I had saved her by allowing her to learn to solve them on her own. The next day was Sunday, and we had planned to visit the beach house together for the first time since I had recovered it. Angela hadn't wanted to go before saying she needed time to process everything that had happened. "Are you ready?" I asked as we got in the car. "I think so." The drive was quiet but comfortable. When we arrived, Angela stayed in the car for a moment, looking at the house where we had spent so many family summers. "It looks exactly the same," she finally said. "Some things don't change, but others do. I'm not the same person who sold this house. We went in together." The house was clean and tidy, exactly as Robert and I had kept it for years. Angela walked through each room, touching the furniture, looking at the family photos hanging on the walls. "Mom, I want to apologize. You've already apologized, dear." "No, I want to apologize specifically for this house. Not just for selling it, but for reducing all our family memories to a business transaction. It's already forgiven. This house represents 40 years of family summers, of birthdays, of Christmases. Dad built that porch with his own hands. You planted that garden. I learned to swim on that beach, and I turned it all into money to finance the adventure of a worthless man." She sat on the sofa where Robert used to read on Sunday mornings. "Do you know what hurts the most?" "What?" "That when I sold it, I felt nothing. It was just another property. Now being here again, I can feel Dad in every corner. I can hear his laugh, smell his morning coffee, see his reading glasses on the table." "He's here, Angela. He's always been here, I know. And I also know he's proud of how you handled all this. We spent the whole day at the house, cooking together, cleaning, fixing small details. It was like a ritual of reconnection, not just with the place, but with the values that place represented. As the sun began to set, we sat on the porch that Robert had built, looking at the sea. "Mom, I have a proposal. What is it I want us to turn this house into a temporary shelter for women leaving situations of domestic violence, a place where they can stay while they rebuild their lives." It was the perfect proposal. Robert would have loved the idea of his beach house being used to help other families. "That sounds like a beautiful idea, dear. We can use some of the foundation's resources to maintain it, and I can oversee the program through my work." "Are you sure you want to turn our family retreat into that, Mom, the best shelters are the ones that are shared?" Dad always said that a house isn't truly a home until it opens its doors to other people who need love. He was right. Robert had always been generous with our home, inviting family, friends, and neighbors who needed a place to stay. We returned home that night with a new project and a completely renewed relationship. We were no longer mother and daughter bound by obligation or need. We were two women who had consciously chosen to build a life together based on love, respect, and a common purpose. That night before I fell asleep, I spoke to Robert in silence. "We did it, my love. Our daughter finally understands what really matters, and for the first time since his death, I felt him answer me. I always knew you would. You're both stronger than you think." Justice had arrived not as revenge, but as education, not as punishment, but as transformation. And in the end, we had both gained something far more valuable than money. We had gained an authentic relationship built on a solid foundation that no future crisis could ever destroy.